Hello everyone, welcome back to Basco Bricks, and welcome back to episode 3 of Bricks Builds and Beyond, and today I have an interview of the wonderful, the great Mr. C. Brick Productions.
Hello.
Alright, let's jump right into it. Alright, so C. Brick, you're clearly a pretty big Lego collector, and one of the very fascinating things that I found when watching your videos and going through your Lego collecting journey, you have a surprisingly really diverse amount of sets and a really diverse collection of things. So I'm kind of curious, what kind of sets really draw your attention?
Um, that's a good question. I don't know. That's not like, yeah, you're right. It's super diverse, as you can tell. I have a lot of different types of like I'm into Lego Star Wars and Marvel and modulars and architecture and just about most of the themes out there. I mean, a majority of them I don't even touch, but most of the themes out there I'm interested in. And it's not really I wouldn't say I have a certain thing that like draws me in. I don't know. If I think it's cool, then I'll go out and get it. I usually watch reviews before I purchase that just to see it in depth before I decide on it. But I don't really have a certain thing where I'm like, yeah, that draws me into a set. It's just sort of like, oh, it's like, oh, if I like it, I just kind of go out and get it. But there's not really anything that's like, oh yeah, this is the reason that I'm getting this.
So, what you're about to see here is my poor attempt in attempting to ask the question if he gets some of his love from Lego from childhood nostalgia. Unfortunately, despite me attempting to ask this question twice, that is not what came out of my mouth. So, please enjoy me stumbling around this question for the next few minutes. So, my apologies to both the viewer and the guest for my slip up here, but he still says some interesting things, so I hope either way you enjoy. So would you say you but purchase a Legos more into the appeal of it being more of a collecting display item, or do you also buy them with the with any appeal, knowing that they're also a lot of times for children toys?
Yeah, I mean, I used to buy them just to play with, as a kid, and I would always end up just breaking them and using them for other like creations and stuff. It wasn't until probably probably about 4 years ago, I started actually keeping some of the sets I had and started putting them on my dresser and stuff. And I don't usually like I don't know, get myself down and actually like play with them. Like only if I just finished a big set will I actually be like, playing with it and, I don't know, just posing different things with it or whatever. I only really play with it when I finish a Lego set. But yeah, like anytime a kid comes over, they're always like, oh yeah, they love these. So I do have a fair amount that I'm like, oh yeah, you can go ahead and play with this and stuff. So even though I don't necessarily play with them, there's some sets that I'm like, yo, those are definitely play sets just as well as they are like display sets.
Yeah, interesting. Honestly, I kind of phrased that a little bit strangely. So oddly enough, that wasn't the question I was getting for. So my apology, but that was still an interesting discussion. Now, what I was more trying to ask was more of so, like me personally, I buy sets knowing that these are toys, and kind of the fact that they are kind of that childish part about them is a bit appealing to me. I'm curious, do you buy these do you like the appeal that they kind of have that toyish look to them, or do you buy sets more into the fact that they're just for purely displays, or do they have that appeal to them because maybe they kind of lock into that maybe some sort of inner child?
Um, I don't know. I guess it just depends on the set. Like some sets I definitely buy just for display, like the architecture sets back there. You can't really play with those at all. They just sort of sit on a shelf. But there's also a fair amount of sets like the typewriter back there. Oh, no, yeah, it is back there. It's way down there. But I bought it because it does look cool, but it also has this just dope functionality where it actually functions. Or like the Indiana Jones diorama. That's something that I plan to purchase soon, just because it does look awesome, but it has a bunch of features. So yeah, I do. I guess yeah, it's mostly for display, I guess, why I get sets, but I guess there might be some sort of inner child in me that does enjoy, playing with functions and Lego and that sort of thing.
Interesting. Okay, and of course, with this huge diversity, do you ever find any complications in displaying so many different kinds of things in one space?
Um, not not really, I would say. I don't know. I don't know if you saw the video, but like probably about a month ago, I actually built a new shelf and it's sitting kind of you can't see it in my room right now, but I built a new shelf with my dad in this room here. So now I have a lot more a lot more room to display stuff. But I've never really, yeah, it's all very diverse, obviously, but I don't know, it's all just kind of Lego, and it all ends up looking pretty fine together. There's certain shelves that I have that's like, oh yeah, this is just like a Star Wars shelf with a bunch of stormtroopers, or I have like a just car shelf, and used to have a just modular shelf back there, up like back there, but they got split up a bit. So yeah, I do sometimes display them with other themes. A lot of stuff like back there, it's just a bunch of random stuff that doesn't really go together, but I still think it looks fine. So no, I don't really struggle with diversity as far as like displaying sense goes.
Interesting, interesting. I always get different answers on that question. Some people really struggle to kind of, I guess, separate things, but that's awesome how you're able to put them all together like that. My personal favorite kind of content on your channel is probably your mocks, because in contrast to these massive creators, you seem to have I guess, a kind of a little bit more random and almost erratic parts selection. It's not as clean and organized as a lot of other larger creators out there have, but yet you still come up with these incredible looking builds. Now I'm curious what your build process or thought process is when you're going through and building a mock.
That's a good question. If it's like an original, so I'll show you like my latest mock, which is just this, and it's just a cube, but I put a rubber band in there, so it just kind of bounces around. And this is just like a fidget toy that I built in half an hour. So I guess I'll use this as an example. But like, I don't know, I kind of had the concept in mind. I knew I wanted to do something with like a rubber band and a lever just to make some sort of like fidget toy. So I kind of had like sort of what I wanted to look like in mind. And I don't know if you can see, but there's a whole bunch of Lego bins there. If you see my videos, you'll see it sometimes. And I I always build on the floor for some reason. I never really build at a table just because they're so like I tend to lay the boxes out and just like dump them out on the floor. That way it's just easier for me to like organize it. So I usually put like a blanket down and put a bunch of bricks on the floor. There's a bunch of Lego bins that I'll sort through to find like parts for something. And often if I'm building a new big mock and I need parts, then I'll just take apart my old mocks. I hardly ever keep mocks for longer than like a month because like whenever I'm getting ready to build another mock, I just end up destroying the old one just to make the new one. So a lot of scrapping parts from other mocks and occasionally Lego sets. Like I don't know if there's a certain part I need that I only have on a set, I'll just take it out real quick and use it for the mock and put it back when I destroy the mock again. But most of it is just me building on the floor and experimenting with a lot of different types of stuff. Like it's just a lot of like trying and failing and trying something else again until you get like a concept down. Like there's a lot of different things that I'll just switch out and kind of mess around with, and it ends up looking pretty different from my original ideas usually, but it always ends up looking pretty cool most of the time. So yeah, I guess that's kind of my mock process.
Interesting. That's a very kind of free mock process, and I think it really does show in your builds. Now, what I'm really curious about is your part selection. Where did you get this part selection from?
Um, Card selection. That's a good question. So I have I have a fair amount of Lego bins back. You can't really see them, but if you look at some of my mock videos and stuff, you'll see them. I It kind of started with there was this dude. I was probably 5 years old, and his sons were moving out of college, and they had a bunch of Lego bins basically in this big thing that they weren't going to use anymore. And so he actually gave them to us. He's a really nice guy, and I had these bins ever since I was like 5, and I it was a lot of Lego. Like it's 12 pretty big bins, and they were all like pretty full. So ever since a young age, I had a lot of Lego around me. But then also I started buying, little sets when I was probably 6, 7, 8, I don't know. And as I said earlier, I would play with them, and when I was done, I would just break it. And eventually, those would end up back in the Lego bins. So for probably 6, 7 years or something, I every time I got a Lego set, it would slowly end up in the Lego bins. So there's a lot of Lego sets from just my childhood that are just, destroyed in there. That's a lot of the parts. Well, a lot of the parts are also from that guy who originally gave us the Legos because yeah, he had a lot of they were obviously all a lot older, and I think there's probably some pretty old parts in there as well as some new parts. But yeah, it's just from like years of like Lego building and then kind of just destroying sets. Just kind of ended up in there over many years.
Do you ever find yourself like making Bricklake orders of pick a bricks cups, or is this like your main one part source?
No, I don't really. I don't know. I don't really believe in like buying something just for mock. I've never bought something like with a mock intended, just because I know I'll probably end up scrapping it for parts at some point. And I have a pretty diverse part selection in my bins there. And obviously I can't build like everything because it's not I don't have that many new parts because all the new parts are sitting in new sets that are on the shelf that are going to stay on the shelf. So there's not that many like new parts in there. It's mostly older parts that are like 5 years old probably. But no, I never really end up bricklinking anything. I try and find a substitute for something. There's usually some sort of substitute you can find. If you can't find the exact brick, you can find a pretty close substitute because Lego's so diverse. So yeah, I never end up bricklinking anything really, just because I don't know. I'd rather buy actual Lego sets than just buy parts. It just I don't know. It's never really appealed to me.
Yeah, that's a very interesting and freeing ideology. I think a lot of people are often kind of hooked on that idea that they need to get this part to do it, and it's awesome that you're able to free yourself from those norms. But also, anyone who's watching this and is curious about any of the setups he's talked about, in the description, I will link a few of his room tours and such. That some of the things that he discussed, you can take a look at that if you want. But I guess let's move out of the few more serious things and maybe let's get on to some of the more fun and relevant questions. It's Lego reveal season. We got May 1st coming up. We got all the new Lego August waves. Is there anything that you can recall that has piqued your interest at all?
Um, yeah, there's a lot of Lego reveals happening, and I can't keep to date on all of it. I try to keep up to date with like, especially sets that I'm really interested in on my channel. I'll usually make a video on, and there's a fair amount of Lego reveals that I just haven't even touched on my channel. Mostly what's like interesting me right now though is the Lego Indiana Jones wave that just dropped. I'm super hyped for that. I really like Indiana Jones. I'm hyped that they're bringing it back, and I plan to buy the diorama like the I forget what it's called. It's like Golden Idol something. I plan to buy that as soon as possible because I think that's one of the best sets they've released this year. And yeah, I'm very hyped for that. There's some other reveals like Lego Sonic got revealed a couple days ago. I think that's really great because like they have they have a big display set for big Sonic fans. But then also they have this option for kids, which I think is great. Like there's an option for both adult collectors and children collectors, or just kids who want to play with Lego. So I think that's great. I think the new Sonic sets are awesome. Let's see what else is there. There's a Land Rover set coming out. I don't know if you saw that. That also looks pretty cool. That looks overpriced though. A lot of the new sets, just the price is scaring me off. Like the Star Wars dioramas, I think, are just kind of overpriced, and it feels like a lot of the stuff is just kind of too expensive. But yeah, the main stuff that's kind of intrigued me is the Indiana Jones wave, and there. Oh yeah, there was also there was a leak of the some like big new Ninjago set that was like $400. It was one of those like city sets, and it was super blurry. Like I could hardly make out anything. But it got leaked like today, I think. And yeah, hopefully we get pictures of that soon. So I'm also really hyped to do that. I'll probably make a video on that. But yeah, mostly Indiana Jones, I guess, is intriguing me.
Yeah, I can speak from personal experience. The Indiana Jones sets do slap, at least the two smaller ones. The big ones coming in the mail, two smaller ones slap. But yeah, so I know you brought up the Lego, like the prices is kind of one thing I want to stick on here because what are your thoughts on kind of like the state of Lego from more of not the product perspective, but from the marketing perspective?
Um, you mean like marketing as in like adult marketing, like sort of what they're doing with the all black boxes 18 up sets? Is that kind of what you
Yeah, maybe I'd word that. Just kind of that honestly, just kind of in general, outside of whether that be the prices, maybe how they're marketing in terms of that sense, just kind of how do you think they're doing now? Like, is there any major things you'd change?
um I don't know. I think they're what they're doing now is pretty dang good as far as like having a lot of stuff for kids as far as Star Wars or Marvel or Harry Potter or any theme. There's a lot of sets for kids that are coming out, and there's also a lot of sets for adults that are coming out for all of these themes, which I think is pretty good. Like they're diverse with their selection for kids sets and adult sets. I think that's really good. That's something that they haven't been doing like for forever really. They haven't been releasing giant adult sets as well as kid sets, and they're all, I think it's clashing sort of perfectly. But I think there's starting to be too many like giant Lego sets like Rivendell and stuff. Like, oh, there's been 5 sets past year if we go back to last April. Yeah, if we go back to last April, there's been 5 sets in the past year that are over $500, and I just think that's a bit much. Like they're going a bit overboard with the giant sets, I feel like. So maybe tone those down a bit. But I really like what they're doing with like the dioramas and stuff, where it's like adult. It's sort of focused at adults, but it's still at a reasonable price point, and it's not going to break your pocket like something like a $500 set will do. So I hope we see more cheaper adult oriented sets because there's a lot of giant expensive ones. And don't get me wrong, we need giant, giant Lego sets for adults like this, but we don't need this many, I don't think.
Yeah. Do you think you'd go as far to say that we're in a quote unquote golden era of Lego?
Um, I don't know. I've heard that term being thrown around, and as far as I'm concerned, it sure seems like it. I mean, like with the designs and stuff and the minifigs and the return of Indiana Jones and Sonic and Mario and Star Wars and all these awesome themes are succeeding really well. It seems like, yeah, Golden Age is, yeah, but that's sort of like, I don't know, because I'm sure a lot of other people would disagree and don't like where Lego's heading. So it's not a golden age for everybody, but I wouldn't say it is for me either. It's just another year of Lego. I guess if you want to call it a golden age, you could, because there's a lot of good sets, but there's also a fair amount of bad sets that are like, well, this isn't golden age worthy. So I don't know. I don't think I'd call it a golden age just quite. I don't know, because there's always going to be bad sets every year. So there's nothing you can really do about that. And yeah, I don't think I'd call it a golden age, but I can see where somebody would be coming from with that stance, I guess.
Yeah, I can definitely see why it may be difficult to classify something as a golden age, especially when you remove bias. Is with Lego constantly getting better, technically we're always in a golden age in that sense. But so when you look at the Lego landscape in terms of the themes, maybe specifically in the licensed themes, are there any major gaps that you see and maybe any themes that you'd like Lego to make?
Um, the only gap that I guess well, there's 2 gaps, I guess. The first gap would be Batman sets, because there were none in 2022. And there's gonna be a giant Batcave coming soon, which I'm super hyped for. That's another set that I guess I'm really hyped for. But like they're kind of inconsistent with Batman. They did Batman dirty, and yeah, I'd like to see Batman come back. And obviously I want to see more James Bond. I mean, we got one James Bond set last year, and we've only had two ever. So like I'd like to see more, and I can see why they don't make James Bond sets because it's a pretty dirty, like dirty movie, and it's dark and it's bloody and it's not always the best. So I can see why they don't make it. And it seems like what they did with the Speed Champion set is they're like, yeah, we're gonna have this Speed Champion set, but it's marketed under Speed Champions, not just James Bond. If it was just James Bond, I would think we'd get more sets, but this is marketed as like a Speed Champion set, and it doesn't seem like they're going to make any more James Bond sets soon, which really sucks for like big James Bond fans like me. But that's yeah, that's sort of the only 2 gaps that I could think of.
Yeah, well, I'd hope with the introduction of a Nazi fighter plane in the Indiana Jones theme, hopefully they'll consider doing some of those bit more quote unquote edgy themes. But all right, well, before we say goodbye to you, I've kind of one last question topic get into here now. So clearly you're at the point of your life where I'm gonna assume you haven't been playing with Lego as a child for years now. So when as you see yourself getting older, how do you feel that your connection with Lego, whether it be your collecting or just kind of in general, how do you feel if ever if that's do you think that's gonna shift at all? Or do you think you're just gonna stick with Lego in the future?
Um, that's a good question. I don't know. I've heard of like people going into their dark age with Lego where they just stop collecting for a while. And I I can't say that I'll ever go into a dark age where I'm like not buying Lego anymore. I don't know. Maybe, well, actually, that's not probably when I go off to college. If I go off to college, then it's gonna be pretty hard to keep buying and displaying sets, but they'll probably still be at home here, so I can come back to them and maybe build at home. I don't know. I haven't thought that far out as far as like, oh yeah, is my love of Lego ever gonna like fade? I'm sure it'll fade at some point. I don't expect to be still collecting when I'm like 60 or something. It's just sort of a like it's just another hobby I have. Like I have a few hobbies. I really like, music and all sorts of other stuff. Lego's not like my number one priority as far as that goes. So it's just kind of another hobby, and if it phases out, it phases out. But I haven't felt like, oh man, I don't want to buy Lego just yet. So I wouldn't say anytime soon, unless like something really big changes. I don't think I'll stop collecting in the next couple years here. I don't know.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean that's definitely a question very rooted in the future. But yeah, that was a very fantastic and interesting answer. Well, I don't think I'll keep you any longer than I already have. Everyone, this has been the great return of Sea Brick Productions on Bricks, Builds, and Beyond. If you enjoyed the video, of course, make consider leaving a like. Go subscribe to Sea Brick Productions channel. His channel will be linked in the description along with a couple of the videos that I mentioned. That everyone, I hope to see you in my next video. See ya.